Everybody, and welcome to day 16 of our GMP Live feature. We are carrying on with our conversation today about product specifications and getting a little bit more into detail on what the product specification requirements are for good manufacturing practices. I wanted to start out by just touching on one thing that I kind of feel like I should have started with potentially yesterday. That is the fact that we don't only require, sorry, I just need to adjust here. There we go. We don't only require product specification sheets from our suppliers. We also require product specification sheets for each raw ingredient we intake, and we require product specification sheets for each product we manufacture and put out. And so through a combination of the various required documentation for manufacturing, you'll actually be able to feed data into these product specification sheets. I have my template set up to auto-populate. So my product spec sheets actually auto-populate and fill in right directly from my incoming ingredient list, which includes my supplier specifications on the products. So I will show you guys how that all works tomorrow and go through that a little bit with you because there are easy solutions to connecting all the dots and automating your documentation so that it's as painless as possible, because there is a lot of documentation, but if you do it right, right from the start, and you enable documents that communicate with each other and they mesh together, it really takes a lot of the manual time and labor out of completing this documentation. So, carrying on with today, we were talking yesterday about the product specification sheets that we were required to create when doing applications. And so we left off talking about establishing and following written procedures, so our standard operating procedures, and we have to set up and follow these written procedures that describe our stability testing and how we ensure identity and purity and quantity of finished products. So we'll have SOPs for things like calibration schedules. How often are you calibrating your scales? You'll have an equipment log where you actually specify what type of scale you're using for what type of job. So I have a couple different scales here. I have my micro scale, which I use for weighing out things like powders and herbs and things like that. I have a standard, if you will, kitchen scale that I weigh my bottles and then tare the scale and then fill my bottles. So that will actually weigh out my finished product, my gross and my net for my finished product. So we need to include those in our specifications, and reference back to the SOP. We don't have to, let me explain this a little differently. We don't have to reference back to the weigh scale specifically. What we have to reference back to is the fact that our SOP for procedures says that we weigh our finished product. It says that we use this scale for this task and these bottles for this task, and so on and so forth. But we don't actually reference the individual details. Instead, what we reference is the SOP. And if you've looked at the quality assurance form that is required as part of the site licensing, it gets into that. That whole form gets into where your GMP standards are and where your SOP references are, and that leads right back to this whole thing that we're talking about in terms of product specifications. So we need to align our product specs for everything we have coming in and everything we have going out, and that includes equipment. So we'll have to record all of our equipment, the make, model, where we can find the user manual, how often it needs to be calibrated. All of these things are spec'd out individually in their separate forms within the good manufacturing practices. And then referenced back to in your actual spec sheet. So your spec sheet contains your ingredient listing, your packaging listing, your process listings, so that'll be your SOPs, and then of course any equipment used, which you will have assigned a number to. So after that, we're going to verify that all test methods provide accurate and consistent results. So providing evidence to the stability testing that we are doing will be part of that. And then of course assessing each lot for compliance with specifications prior to release. So what does our SOP say in relation to the quality assurance person signing off on a product prior to release? So that's kind of the long and the short of our product specification sheets. Now what I want to talk to you guys a little bit about is completing the product specifications of incoming materials. So when I go online and I place an order, let's say it's at Windy Point or it's at Voyager, you will notice, and they both have it in different places, but they provide an Msg Us sheet, and they give you all of the manufacturer's recommendations. So the usage recommendations, shelf life recommendations, a large majority of time there will be an expiry date. All of that information should be recorded in your incoming ingredients log, and then it will populate if it's set up properly, which I will go through with required documentation, but it should then auto-populate your product specification form. So on your product specification form, what it's going to show is it's going to show you used this master formula, which includes these ingredients, which includes this equipment, which includes this packaging, and each of these things are referenced and logged within your good manufacturing practices and your standard operating procedures. So every piece of equipment should be logged. Every raw ingredient that comes in should be logged. All of your packaging materials should be logged, and each of these items is assigned a unique name and number kind of thing. So for me, when I'm assigning an equipment code, it's EQ and then a 4-digit number that follows. So my weigh scale, let's say, is EQ-WS for weigh scale. And then I get into my 4-digit number. If it is a mixer, like my smaller equipment, I just put the EQ. My larger equipment, I put, I shouldn't say my larger, my more important equipment, like things that need calibration, I will put a secondary code with it. So like the WS for weigh scale. And then it's all recorded in an equipment log. And all of this information, if it's set up correctly off the hop, with your required documentation, it will all auto-populate into your product specification sheet. So then you create a binder of your product specification sheets, and what's in the binder is actually going to be copies. So you take a photocopy of your product specification sheet. Your original is needs to be stored somewhere else where you're not going to spill, you're not going to, you're not going to drip something on it, you're not going to whatever. So it's highly recommended that all of your binders that you're working through regularly are copies of originals, that your originals are all safely secured. And then of course, the last piece of that is backup. Like you need to be either storing off-site your originals for protection, or in my case, what I do is, like I said, I will take a photocopy and I will take a scan, and I have an electronic file saved on an external hard drive that is then off-site. Well, it's not really off-site in my case. In my case, it's locked in a fireproof safe, so that if anything ever happened, God forbid, I would have all my records. Because it's not so much that, it's not, I guess, the same as accounting. Like with accounting, if something goes wrong with your accounting and you don't have it backed up, that's on you personally. But what we're dealing with here is natural health products, it's cosmetic products, it's people's health, it's people's daily wellness. And so no matter what happens in our world, fire, flood, disaster, you name it, those records need to exist, and they need to be backed up, and they need to be stored safely. And that includes your product specification sheet, because that is where all of your information merges into. So that's just, a little bit more about that. And now I'm just going to carry on with what I've got here. So we're talking about GMP evidence for specifications and product specifications for all products to be manufactured, packaged, labeled, or imported to the site. We need that for GMP compliance. Additionally, we need approval of finished product. The finished product specifications, I was saying earlier, have to be signed off by the QAP, which is the quality assurance person. So that must be, you must have the initials or the signature or however you're planning on setting it up. You need to have a record of approval from the QAP regarding any changes to the finished product. So before you go on to the government website and update your EPLA or update your CNF, you must have a sign off from the quality assurance person, which in most cases for us starting out businesses and having smaller operations, that quality assurance person is us, but we still need to make sure that we are signing off on those changes before we submit the changes to Health Canada. That's very important. We have to write out these processes and then we have to literally follow them to a T to ensure that our SOP and GMP is being met and being consistently met. We need to ensure that relevant SOPs related to finished product testing and associated blank record templates are there. So if ever you get audited or if ever there's an inspection or if ever there is a recall, this is what Health Canada wants to see. They want to see your SOPs, your written out SOPs, not just your reference. Like in our product specification sheets, we're going to reference our SOP number. What this is saying is they want to, if ever there's an audit, an inspection, a recall, any of those things, they want to be able to visually see the original SOP, which is the original standard operating procedures that you've referenced in your product specification sheet, and they want to see any associated records for finished product testing, and they want to see any blank record templates that are related to the specification. So in this case, it would be having your incoming ingredient spreadsheet with all of your data for your own product specs as well as for your supplier product specs. That one document would really be the blank record template that they would want to see. And then of course they're going to want to see a certificate of analysis for all of the products that you have coming in. So I know I was mentioning I did have a recall based on a supplier error earlier this year, and I had my certificates of analysis for all of my ingredients that went into the products, and I had all of my documentation in line. My batch records were in line, my product spec sheets were in line. And so I know I've heard nightmare stories of people who've had to do recalls, and in my case it was literally like a day and a half process of communication back and forth and sharing, of course, of electronic files that I keep and that I manage and I keep up to date. And that was really all that it took to get that whole thing straightened out and settled. And so it really alleviated any pressure and stress that I had heard from other manufacturers that they had experienced when they had to do a recall or had, an inspection or had an audit done. So, and then the last thing that we have on this list here is evidence that testing against specifications adheres to GMP. And so we will get a little bit more into stability testing. That is what they're looking for in this last line. And I know we were talking a little bit, Sarah, I believe it was, asked in the Facebook group if I knew anywhere that had any of the dip slides, anywhere local. And I actually have like, I don't know, four or five different suppliers that I know that have the dip slides. What I've started to do, and I haven't really shared a whole lot with you guys about it, individually I've shared with a few of you things like natural preservatives, spectrostat. Can't get it in anything less than like, I think it's, I don't even know, I think it's a 40 kilogram barrel or something to that effect. Same thing with the dip slides. To get the dip slides at a discount price, you need to order X amount and you need to have, you know, a different wholesale arrangement with them. But I guess the bottom line is that what I'm finding and what a lot of other manufacturers are finding is that, you know, similar to when you're, you know, teaching your kids about going out in public, their safety in numbers. In this case, there's a benefit to numbers of people and of users of a certain raw material. And so what I've done is I've sent out to several of these suppliers and I have requested information about achieving some type of wholesale agreement with them so that the Canadian Makers Corner on Facebook, like you guys, the members here, would have the opportunity to then buy these items at a wholesale price as a collective group. So similar to, you know, there's certain discounts with the BCAOA, there's certain discounts with the HBBG. All of these different professional associations can offer some types of discounts at different places that support them. So what I'm trying to arrange is I'm trying to arrange some supplier specials for my members to get some of the items that, you know, are more expensive and only can be purchased in bulk, like the Spectrostat. If you guys have not looked into it, it's a great natural preservative system. It's broad spectrum. It's an excellent system. It incorporates hurdle technology and really delves deep into bio-based preservatives, and it's got some excellent testing to back it up. And so I've recently started using it myself. I love it. I was able to get a sample of it, but now moving forward to purchase, it's only in larger supplies. So what I would love for you guys to do is, and I will start actually a thread within the Facebook group, but I'm going to start a thread discussing, you know, what some of the items are that you guys need for your businesses to operate, to create, to manufacture that are maybe more challenging to get, whether it's from a Canadian supplier or not, you know, and what some of those items are. And those can be some of the areas that I start working towards getting some different pricing for. So I actually have a meeting this afternoon with two different companies regarding the dip slides. So I should have some pricing back to you guys shortly on that. And the Spectrostat, I have a meeting next week with them to discuss some pricing for the members as well. So that covers preservatives and that covers one type of stability testing. There are lots of other areas I'm sure you guys could use some support. So I will, like I said, start a discussion in the Facebook group feed, and we will kind of go from there. And you guys can drop your asks in that feed, and then I will see what I can get set up in terms of some special savings for our members. And that is where I'm going to leave it for today. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a zoom into the live, and it's probably going to be a little bit longer because I really want to get into this required documentation and how you can create it to feed into and to merge together to create your documents. If you start the intake of those raw ingredients and those supplier contacts, if you start it correctly off the start, you can create a merged set of documents. So really you're only physically and manually entering that data once, and then it will auto-populate for you. So we will chat more about that tomorrow. And for today, I hope you guys all have a great afternoon, and I will see you guys all tomorrow. Chat with you soon. Have a good day now.